been learning some things about the tools I'm using to build authorization for LiveShowy. I figured I would go ahead and share what I've done. So I'll jump right in. I guess if I started writing code, so let me comment this out real quick before it goes up. So what I've been learning is, well, just to back up a little bit. So the vision that I have for authorization in LiveShowy, and this could work in other LiveView apps potentially, if it's not a crazy or a bad idea. But the idea is whenever the LiveView mounts, there will be a session hook. So it will call onMount. That happens through the router. And then so the socket is going to get a new assign where it will receive it will take the current LiveView. You know what, let me just share my screen so I can actually read the code, because that'll be a little bit clearer, I think. So here is the application, but before we get to that, let me open up this session hook that I've created, and I think this will make sense, hopefully. So I'll just step through this. So I'll expand this just a little bit. So what's happening here is whenever any route uses this onMount hook, it's going to go through this flow. And if you're new to Elixir, with is kind of like a replacement for complex nested if statements and switch statements and that kind of thing. This is kind of a sequential, like perform this step, and then if it is successful, perform the next step, the next step. So you can read from top to bottom the steps that are going to be performed. And at any point, if one of these clauses doesn't match, like the expected result, it will fall out through the else clause, the way I have set it up here. So that's like a kind of it's kind of a rough explanation of the with clause. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of point that out to make sense of what's happening. So whenever I use a with clause, I've started using tagged tuples. So I'll give the clause a name so that I can check for a specific error case inside of the else block. So basically what's going to happen here is if the socket is connected, then it returns true. If the socket's not connected, that means that like the page isn't finished loading yet. So in a nutshell, so it's just going to let the LiveView keep moving, or let the socket keep moving. So at that point, it would just kind of re-render the socket. So anyway, at that point, it will kind of come back through this flow. So the reason this happens is if you, like say you type in a URL to like one of these LiveViews, the first request is HTTP without a socket. So that socket would not be connected. So for maybe a few milliseconds, that will happen before the socket gets kind of rendered or like set up in JavaScript and then sent back to the server. So I feel like I might be explaining things a little bit. So anyway, if the socket is connected, it's going to grab the current user out of the socket assigns. And as long as it is a valid user, then it's going to get the socket view, or it's going to get the view module out of the socket. So that will be like the module name of whichever LiveView is being loaded, or I should say mounted. From there, so as long as that is successful, then we're going to get the user roles. This could probably, the sequence of this step doesn't necessarily matter, I don't think. Like these could be flipped to kind of move current user closer to socket. Anyway, I think I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so I'm going to kind of group together this, like the socket assign and socket data, just kind of, and then have user steps after that. So what I'll do is I'll make sure the socket's connected. I will get the view module from the socket. I will get the user, the current user, from the socket assigns. I will take that current user's roles, and then I will look, I've got an authorization module, so it will look for module permissions, and it's going to take the roles for the user, and it's going to kind of filter it down to any roles that have permissions for this particular module. And then after that, it's going to get the permissions from each role. And yeah, and then at that point, it will assign the allowed events to the socket so that I can use those in my LiveViews. And then there are a couple of error handlers here. So if there's not a valid user, it's going to redirect back to the login page. And let's see here, I think if there were no allowed events or no roles for the user, it would fall out to the not authorized, and it would kind of redirect you to the landing page. As I'm reading this, I might want to come back and kind of just double check that and make sure it's working the way I expect, and make sure it's tested so that we can be confident. But so in order for this to work, I need to be able to have a list of LiveView modules, and I need to be able to list the event names that are being handled in that LiveView, because that's what I want to check against. Like I want the LiveView to render only if you have permission to view that module or that LiveView. And then once that page is loaded or that view is loaded, typically there's some interactions, and you should only be able to perform those interactions if you have permission to do so. And so all of those permissions will kind of be grouped together as roles, and those roles are kind of linked to users as they are basically this would be something that the admin type user would be setting up. And kind of this is what I've started on is like a role management LiveView. So it can get a list of users. Actually, I'll just open that up over here. So whenever this thing mounts, and I'm going to start plucking things out of the socket here shortly. But first I grab a list of all the users and I preload their roles so that I can list them here. I will, and roles are not quite being used in this context yet, but for each user, I take, take the username, and so I put the username and the user ID in a map so that I can render like the username that you would want to update, and the actual value is going to be the user's ID, under the hood. So if we look at this option here, like currently locally in this app, my username is Owen and my user ID is this long random string here. So that's what would actually be sent back to the form whenever this thing is changed. Then I also have a list of any modules that contain live or that end in live. So let's see, I think I'm filtering that in here somewhere. So I'll come back to that. So within the LiveView, I have a roles variable, which is just listing all of the roles that are already existing in the app. You're not seeing those over on the right side yet. I'm also listing LiveViews. So this is going to be a list of all of the modules that are actually LiveViews. And I may be doing it kind of sloppily right now, but I think I can refactor that as we get started on coding. And then currently, this is kind of a work in progress. So a lot of the stuff you see here is going to change. But I'm kind of taking that list of LiveViews, and this is the new thing. And this is what I learned today, was how to get the events. So within a LiveView, you'll typically have, you'll define handle event. You'll give it a string name of like submit or change, like if you're working with forms typically. And then you'll have a payload, which is the second argument. Could be whatever arbitrary data you're allowing through the LiveView. And then the third argument is the socket. So this is where things are starting to get a little bit fancy. So first, what happens is we call LiveShowy.application.list LiveViews. And inside of this module, this is what happens. We take this list modules function that I created, and what this does is it takes the application spec for LiveShowy and it gets the modules. So what does that look like if we actually just run application.spec and then we tell it LiveShowy? You'll see a bunch of metadata about the application, and you can do this with your own applications, by the way. So this is using the built-in application module from Elixir. And what I want out of this keyword list is modules. So that's what happens there. Keyword.get modules. Cool. So that's a list of all of the modules for that are contained within the LiveShowy application. You'll see most of these actually start with LiveShowy. There are a couple like JSON encoder that are available as well. But we've also got several that start with LiveShowy web. And that's actually where we want to look. So this is where I could probably refactor this code a little bit. And I'll probably be doing that as I start writing this for comprehension. But for now, what it does is it takes that full list of module names and it filters it. So it takes each module name, converts it to a string, and then checks to see if it matches this string pattern. And so this is looking for anything containing LiveShowy web. Like we don't really care about business or backend modules. I don't really need JSON modules here because I'm looking just for LiveViews. And yeah, this is going to change, but currently it's looking for anything that has LiveShowy web dot something live. And so if I actually run LiveShowy dot application dot list live views, then I get a much shorter list. This is a list of just the modules that contain live in the name somewhere after LiveShowy web. So that's a little bit brittle because you could potentially, like this doesn't really guarantee that each module is actually a live view. But there's actually a way to check. So if I take the landing page, for example, I can to refresh my memory how I got to this earlier. Okay, so there's a info callback available to modules within Elixir, and you can request a list of different data points. So this is the callback here on the right side. It's _info_. And close that. So this is kind of where I'm getting the details that I need, at least some of the details I need. So here you can list functions that are defined for a module. So if I run this on the landing live view, you'll see that this is the type of data that comes back. So we get some of these keys here. There is a mount function for this with arity of 3. It has a render function with an arity of 1. And let's see, there's a couple of others that I haven't looked deeply into these. I think some of these are actually going to be used for like a live component, like the slots and props, that kind of stuff. I think makes more sense for live components. Actually, some of this may be like a work in progress for Phoenix LiveView because I think I'm not entirely sure whether props are fully ready within LiveView. I think those are kind of being migrated and adapted from Surface into LiveView. So that's one way I can kind of maybe find out some information about this module. I can also just take a look at its attributes. So this is actually where I can filter only the modules that actually have a behavior for LiveView. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and do that now while it's kind of on my mind. And that's actually going to be a lot cleaner, I think, than, yeah, that's going to be a lot cleaner than actually converting the module name to a string and doing all this kind of regular expression stuff. So let's just kind of update this here. So if I wanted the attributes for a given module, then I can say, actually, I wonder, I need to see if I do keyword get behavior, is it going to show me both behaviors? Oh, I got to give it the list. Okay, it only returns the first key. Let's take a quick look at before I do that, I'm gonna take a quick look at compile, because compile also has some metadata, but it doesn't have the data that would help me figure out whether this module is a LiveView. So in order to do that, I need to basically, I want to find out whether the module has a behavior for Phoenix LiveView. I think the first thing that comes to mind is looking at the keyword to see what functions we have so we can dig in a little bit. Maybe I can just get the values. There we go. That's one way to do it. Let's see if there's maybe a cleaner way. I think that will that would be a good start. So keyword dot get values adders behavior, British spelling. Okay, and then we want that to be a flat list. Like right now, it's returning a nested list of each behavior. So you can see here, this behavior is in a list. This one's in a list as well, and those are both within kind of an outer list. So let's see. We could pass this to list maybe dot what flatten. That works. I think there's also an enum function similarly. So enum dot flat map. I think we'll just use let's see, list dot flatten, and then we'll say Phoenix dot LiveView in behaviors. So this should filter correctly This also removes the need to remove live helpers, I think. Let me just take a quick look at that. Yep, okay, so it's not actually using, so it's not actually going to use the live view behavior. So let's just find out if that's true. First, probably need to recompile. And now I can say LiveShowy.application.list LiveViews. There we go. Very good. So now it's a little bit smarter. It's only returning a list of module names that are actually using the LiveView behavior. Perfect. That's what we want. So that's good. Now I could golf this around. I could simplify this and probably convert this into a pipeline. That's something I would typically do. But for each of these modules, I also I want this function to return a map of all of the live views as the keys, and then for each live view module, I want it to have a list of compiled events. The shape of that might change a little bit as I think it through, but that's kind of what I want as the end result. So I'm gonna comment this out here just for a reference, and I've actually gotten more comfortable over the past week or two using for comprehensions, and because so in JavaScript, PHP, other languages, you can do for loops, and there are some things you can do within a for loop most of the time, but until maybe 4 to 6 months ago, I didn't really understand how powerful for comprehensions are in Elixir. There was a post, I think from Jose on Twitter about, or a tweet, where I think maybe it was kind of promoting something he had said in the forums or somewhere that kind of showing examples of how you can use for comprehensions. So this can do a lot. So let me just show you what I'm doing here so that maybe it makes sense for this particular example. So this is kind of something you would normally see in a for loop. You can iterate over a list or an enumerable collection and use each item. You can also pattern match if this had a different shape. I could take like the, whatever other keys or like whatever other values are in a tuple, if that was a list of tuples. In this case, it's just a list of atoms that comes back from list modules. What's cool about Elixir is this next part. So this is actually a function I haven't created yet, but it's going to be a helper function that returns true or false. And so the way I'm using it here is it's going to filter this list of modules. And instead of doing like if inside of this for block, this is only going to have so this is going to remove anything that's not a live view out of this list. And then I can also tell this for comprehension, and this is just absurd that you can do all this in one line so succinctly, but I'm also going to reduce the results into a map. So I'm just going to have a map at the end of this, and it's going to be great. So let's start making it happen. First, I'm going to add this private function is a live view question mark. This will be a module name, and so how did I get that earlier? I would say module dot underscore info underscore what was it? Attributes? Yeah, attributes. And from there, I will take the keyword dot get values behavior. And from that, I will list dot flatten so from here, I could add like another step to this pipe that would do this, but I think I'm going to make it more explicit for the humans that might need to read this later. Behavior. then I'm just going to assert at the bottom that Phoenix.LiveView is in behaviors. So this will return true or false. This is kind of like a shorthand for, checking whether this item is in a list. Okay, so I'm getting a red squiggly because I have not finished this for comprehension, but that's fine. I'm going to just call this the ACK, which is like short for accumulator, or I tend to go with more descriptive names. So like I'm going to say result. And then what I'll do is, I think I'm going to, instead of using the module name as the key, I think I'm going to just do a kind of a standard structure here. Module of, well, actually, let me think about this. So module, and then compiled events is going to be module.compiled events, and that's where the magic happens. Results. All right, okay, so this is going to be the module map, and I'm going to merge, so I'm going to do map dot merge Yeah, okay, so let me step back a little bit here and think about how I want these to be stored. Okay. So I think I will so I keep changing. I feel like I'm flip-flopping a little bit here, but result actually. There we go. Okay, so this is compiling, and I'm going to recompile. You just saw something there, I think. Yeah, so you saw compiled events. I've got an IO inspect that's making that happen. I'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, and then I think this will work. So I can refactor this to a list of maps if I need to later. So I was kind of on the fence. Do I want to have a map where each module is the key? That is nice because it allows for very, very, very rapid lookup because you don't have to filter through the list. And I think that's going to be the right call at the end of the day. I think why I was flip-flopping was I thought, okay, maybe it would be more ideal to have like a map where you say module colon like module name, and then compiled events colon list of events. That would be a little bit more explicit, like about what each map is doing. But I think if I rename this function name, I think it will make sense. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete this kind of prototype code. You can see this is actually much cleaner. So again, just to kind of step back through this, and I'm really excited about talking about compiled events here. But so first I take this list of all the modules from the application. I filter it through this function to determine whether or not this module has the Phoenix LiveView behavior, or whether it uses that. And then I produce one map at the end of this for comprehension. So the result of that is I take this map and I put the module name as the key. So that's what's happening here. and then I take the list of compiled events, and that becomes the value. So like I think you've seen, if you watched a couple of videos now, probably a few weeks ago, I was working on this add device LiveView, and I've got all of these handle event functions defined, and these are the events that are implemented for that particular LiveView. So now, whenever I use that session hook, I can take this list of events and I can render that into, I can take that, actually not in the session hook, but in the manage roles LiveView. I can take this list of available, like of compiled events, and I can render those here. Like currently these are hard-coded, but what I want to happen is I want to select a LiveView. That's wrong. So I'll select a LiveView, and then whenever I do that, it will update this list of events with whichever events are implemented in that LiveView. That's going to be phenomenal because that means I don't have to manually like update like a keyword list or like have this stored in a database somewhere. This all gets determined at compile time. So there was so I got a lot of feedback and actually honestly help from the Slack, from the Elixir Slack channel, and I think it was in the LiveView kind of sub channel there. So shout out to everyone who helped me with that. I think Lost Cobra Kai was kind of the one that kind of actually gave me some example code that kind of worked exactly and gave me exactly what I needed. So this is the results, or this is kind of what's making it possible to list all of the implemented events for a LiveView. So, and I couldn't be happier that I asked for help, because it would have maybe taken me hours, maybe weeks to figure this out. I was looking a little bit at the module documentation and I was kind of seeing this on definition before compile, and I thought, okay, there's something here, but it wasn't really clear to me how I would use this, because I've not really gone into the compiler much at all. I've kind of dabbled in compiler stuff with Elixir back a couple of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. I helped the changelog optimize their compiler right before Elixir released a big update that would have kind of done some of that anyway. But anyway, so we were kind of helping reduce cross module recompilation, like cross module dependency recompilation. I forget what the exact term was. Okay, so that's my history with the Elixir compiler, or the Erlang compiler maybe. But what happens here, so this is a new module called LiveShowy.Codetracker, and I'm actually kind of in discussions about maybe whether this is something useful for LiveView applications generally. So if you're watching this at any point and you think this is a good idea, like you want to be able to see the list of events that have been implemented for any given module, this is not built into Phoenix or Phoenix LiveView, but I could see the use case, and I would be happy to open a PR if it's useful to anyone else on the world, and if it's deemed to be a good idea by the Phoenix team. So what this module does is it adds a little bit of compile time analysis. I didn't want to be too descriptive here, because right now it's getting the list of events, but I might add some other kind of data here as well. So this is defining a macro, _using, and it quotes, and don't get me, I probably can't fully explain macros currently, but just think of it as like you can write some code that will be injected into another module. So long story short, in a nutshell, what this is going to do is it creates this compiled events function, and it takes this list of tracker data and reverses it. So that's going to be compiled into whichever module uses this macros from this module, and that tracker data is established through this first def macro using. So it registers an attribute for whichever module it's being used in. And that attribute name is going to be tracker data, and it's going to accumulate values. And so these are a couple of callbacks for module. So the first one is going to be, where is it, on definition. There we go. So a hook that will be invoked when each function or macro in the current module is defined. So this is useful when annotating functions, accepts a module or module tuple. See the compile callback section below. So yeah, I would have had to read this doc at least probably 2 or 3 times to understand how to do this. And then the next callback is before compile, which is right here. So this is a hook that will be invoked before the module is compiled. It accepts a module or a module tuple. Again, see the callbacks section below. So all these 2 things do is they unquote the whichever module name that this macro is being run in. So it's not this, like typically whenever you use _module, like say you're doing that within a function that you've defined, that's going to be the name of whichever module you're in. And so like normally that would be this module here. But this is a different case. Like this is a macro and it's inside of this quote block. So it's actually going to take the module name of whichever module that this code is being injected into. So I hope that makes sense. And then the next thing here is on definition. So this is another hook. And this time I'm just going to find it. Actually, is this not documented? Okay, maybe this one isn't documented, so I never would have figured this out. So I think, if I remember correctly, I think what this is doing, not if I remember, but if I guess correctly, this is a like a callback as well. So it takes whichever environment that the compiler is running in. And then, actually, I'll read this one here first because it's more descriptive. So the first argument is the environment. The next argument is the kind. So this would be like the kind of like what it's picking up here is def. So it's looking for any time handle event is defined, and then it's taking this list of args, and it's only grabbing the first arg and then kind of ignoring everything else. And it's also ignoring the guards and the body. So there's some useful information in there. Like if I was doing something different, I might actually need to look into the body or the guards or something else. But for what I'm doing here, this is exactly what I needed. So anytime a LiveView module is defining handle event, it's going to take the first argument. If that is a binary argument or like a binary value, then it's going to put into that tracker data this event. Otherwise, so this callback could be run on other bits of data from the module as it's being compiled, and we're basically ignoring everything else for now. But here's another idea that I might implement if I need it later. Like I might want to understand, there's also a handle info callback, and that could be useful to say, hey, this module also implements handle info, which the way I've used it previously in LiveShowy was to kind of broadcast messages from one module to another or from one process to another. So there may be a use case for adding something like that in here, but that's not something that I would necessarily be authorizing users against. So it's not something I really need to add currently. What else? So before the module is compiled, it creates a function called compiled events. And again, this is the last thing it does. It just takes that attribute that we defined earlier called tracker data and reverses it. Now I'm curious, why does it reverse it? I think that's maybe because it is, honestly, I don't know if it goes like in sequential order from like the top to the bottom of the file or something else. So this was just the example that was provided. I could actually just say enum sort, and it would be an alphabetical list. And I think that would be actually more helpful for what I'm trying to do here. So I'm going to recompile. That worked. And then now if I run list LiveViews, these are in alphabetical order. Cool. So you'll see that there are some cases where there's more than one instance of an event name. And that's because you can pattern match. So I can say like WebAuthn supported, and if the value is true, or if it's false, then I have different function definitions for that. So what I probably should do here is I'm going to go ahead and break this out into a multi-line function. Then I'm going to enum.unique. So I'm going to make sure it's a unique list. So I'm only seeing each event name once, and I'm going to sort it alphabetically after that. So I think that if I recompile, there we go. So now WebAuthn supported only appears once in the list for this module where it's checking for that. Cool. And I don't think I've created any macros yet. I have gotten more comfortable updating macros within like the generated LiveView code. So like within your myapp_web, you'll see a bunch of macros for like components, LiveViews, live components, and that kind of thing. So I've got more familiarity kind of updating that to kind of add things that I would like to use. And I think another use case that I see for macros like this would be like reducing duplicate code. So like a lot of cases, and I have to dig into it a little bit. It's probably not something I want to do on the live stream today. But like for example, I'll typically have a handle event at the end of a live view that doesn't look for a specific event name. So it's kind of like a fallback in case there's an event being pushed from the client or something. I don't want it to crash the process of the live view. So I want it to kind of log that so it can be followed up on later, and just let the socket basically ignore it after it's logged. And I've been kind of copy pasting that into LiveViews so far, and I probably will still do that for the next few weeks. But I could see that being abstracted away through a macro kind of like this. So that's the code tracker. I'm really glad it just works the way it does, and that's kind of the primary thing I wanted to show off about what I've been doing here. So now that is in place, I'm going to refresh this page. You see that the LiveViews list is right here. And okay, so this is why the select list is a little bit wonky right now, because I need to kind of manipulate this a little bit. I need to manipulate this list and pass certain values into the select and then certain values into the checkbox. So let's see. First, I think I need to rename this function, because it's not just listing LiveViews anymore. It's listing LiveViews with their events, with their event names. So how long do I want this function name to be? That's the question. List LiveViews. Let's just call it LiveView events. There we go. List. So I think that makes sense. LiveShowy application list LiveView events. That returns a map of the module LiveView and then the events. Cool. So someone mentioned earlier that so if I'm listing these events here, these are the events that are compiled into the application. And there's a limitation here. So this would not handle any of those undefined events that might be passed in from the client. The way I'm building this app, that's not something I want to allow anyway. Like I'm building an authorization process here. So I want to allow users to only do the things that were predefined, events that were predefined in the LiveView. I don't want to just have to like start accepting like arbitrary events. Because really there should be none of those. Like that means if someone's sending arbitrary events that I haven't considered or factored into the application, that means that someone's doing something probably nefarious, probably through JavaScript or sending messages over the WebSocket. So those are things I want to prevent. So I think it's actually a good thing for here and for this use case that I'm only handling the events that are compiled into a LiveView. Okay, but now I need to render a list of only the LiveView modules and not their event names within this select field. So let's see here. There's a couple ways to do that. I could take map keys for the options there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to say LiveView modules, and then this is going to be map.keys LiveViews, which that I'm also going to rename LiveView events. Okay, so now we have, very good, we have just the module names showing up as options here. And then the next thing is I need to render the events. Like I need to update this events list whenever there's a change to this field. So I could do an onChange handler for the entire form, but that would keep firing this function for every change within the form. What I really want to do is I want to handle it, like I only want to update the events whenever this LiveView field changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, what is it, Phoenix change. I think I'm going to say update events. It just dawned on me that there's a circular thing that can happen here where like an admin will see the admin, like the manage roles, like right here. So you've got admin live manage roles. So you could hypothetically as an admin add other admins with permissions for certain events. But what's really cool about this is you can add flexibility. Like you can add permissions only to do certain actions within a LiveView. Like maybe you want a LiveView to be read-only for users. So you would see their list of events and you would not enable any of those events for that particular permission. Okay, so there's so much going on here. I know it's probably confusing to understand everything that's happening, but I think this was called updated events. And I need to, let's see, I think this is going to be value or something. It's probably going to be in a map. There's going to be a socket. I'm going to, for now, just let that socket keep going, and then I'm going to inspect the value. So now, and by the way, I don't need this IO inspect up in the mount anymore because I understand this map that's coming back. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, so now I can select a live view. I should have seen, okay, what's not happening here? Oh, yeah, because I'm using surface, I can just use change instead of Phoenix change. Maybe, maybe not. Oh, I bet I have to do like a custom option. That's what it is. Okay. So I think this is kind of a unique case because submit, or wait, no, update events. So with Surface, I think they kind of use the kind of most broad use case where you would be handling changes from the entire form. So like typically you would have a change handler right up here inside of the form tag. But I don't, like I said earlier, I don't want to trigger this function. I don't want to trigger update events every time any field changes. Even if I pattern match against certain things, that's just more overhead than I really need. So is that doing what I think it's supposed to be doing? There's Phoenix change, update events. There's a handle event for update events. Let me refresh this page here. Okay, I'm not seeing that list getting inspected. Okay, I think I've done this before. So this is under the ops. Okay, required true. Let me take a look at the HTML here. There should be a Phoenix hook, Phoenix change. Phoenix change is right there. I didn't typo it. Maybe it's Phoenix input. That's not doing it either. I have a feeling that, so right now this is a keyword list. It might look like a tuple because everything's being wrapped, but these brackets within the Surface syntax, these outer brackets are basically like your interpolation, so you don't have to do parentheses equals and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like a syntactic sugar. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to convert this into a map just to see if this fixes the issue. And then I'll convert these to arrow keys, which throws, oh, here we go. Nope, it really does want a keyword list. Okay. What if I just put this keyword list? Okay, so it seems to be a valid keyword list. PHX change, update events. All right, that's not working, so I'm going to change course just a bit. Okay. Okay, so now I'm getting what I needed. I'm getting that. Okay, so I can pattern match here. I can make sure that this function only runs. Oh, hang on a second, I got a call. So let's see. I could pattern match this so it only like this particular function only happens. Okay, I'm really getting a call. Let me be right back. All right. Turns out it was not an emergency, but anyway, here we are. So, okay, so what was I doing? I was working on handling change events from the form so I could update the events list in the LiveView. So let's pick up where I left off. So this is the structure of the value that comes back whenever there's a change. And I'm actually only interested in the LiveView value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pattern match here. So this is for the user role key. And then I'm taking the live view pardon me. So at this point, the LiveView module will be a string. So it actually needs to be converted to an atom. We'll talk about that. So yeah, like if I tried to say like get events on this, or get compiled events on that string, it's not gonna happen. So what I'm gonna do is string dot to. Now it's important to use to existing atom because you don't want to there's a limit on how many atoms are in memory for an Erlang or Elixir application. I think it's somewhere over 1 million, maybe more nowadays with newer computers. But yeah, anyway, long story short, just use string.toExistingAtom, and that will save you some really big headaches potentially in the future. Okay, so let's see. LiveView module. Oh yeah, and then from here it's going to be super duper easy. So we're going to assign events, and that's going to be the LiveView module dot compiled events. Watch this. Okay, so I gotta it works. It works. I've got to update the grid here so it will keep things consistent. Okay. Sweet. Okay, so watch. I'm gonna arrow kind of through the module names. Okay, so some of these don't actually have any event handlers, which is fine. Like right now, this manage roles, LiveView only has the change handler. And add device has more event handlers. So I'm actually going to, like right now, those are being upcased or capitalized, I think. And we don't necessarily want to do that. I think we just want to return these events like in whatever format they're coming back from at the LiveView. Okay. So there's going to be a little bit more to this role form, but this is the pieces are falling into place. So the way I intend to use this is like an admin is going to select a user, and they're going to create a role, or they're going to be editing or updating a role on this page, or on this LiveView. If they want to add a new role, they're going to select from the list of LiveViews. They're going to select whichever functions they want this user to be able to perform with a given role. Actually, I take that back. It's going to be separated out a little bit. So first, like there may actually not be a user field here. As I'm thinking through it again, I think what I've done is I've set it up so that there's like a roles table, there's a users table, then there's a join that kind of combines the two together. So I think what you would do here is you would actually just be defining a role first, and you would say a role will have one or more LiveView LiveViews that it can define permissions for. So like a select may not be the way to go here. It may need a multi-select actually, And then I may need to render another multi-select with all of the events and kind of group them by module so that it's kind of clear what to do there. I think that seems clear enough to me. I'm going to go ahead and build that now. So I'm going to actually remove the user. So this LiveView, if I keep moving in this direction, it's going to probably need to be renamed to something like create role. But we'll just, or like, you know, I think role management is fine. Because even if you're editing a role, or I think that would be okay. So anyway, so we're going to have a multi-select list. Let's see. Oh, it would be a different element, multiple select. Oh, also, I'm not using the inputs context here. I'm going to go ahead and fold up some of this code so I can focus just on the actual HTML, I like the layout and the content. Okay, so this is going to be a multi-select, or multiple select, actually. Which does change things slightly for that event handler that I just added, because it's not going to get just one, it's not going to be just one module name. It could be multiple. It's going to be a list. So I actually need to iterate over that. First, let's make sure I configure this the way I need it to be configured. So there's no size property for this component, but I could say size is, I can say 10. That would make this a bigger box. I could say it's 2. That would be less useful. For the sake of simplicity and keeping things in base 10 len, let's just use 10. And there will be more modules here, so I think that this will be just fine. Okay, so that renders that field correctly. This is actually going to be, we're not going to actually have, you know what, I'm going to keep this here, calls, but I'm going to make it one column since I'm using a multi-select. Forget about layout for now. I really need to get this form just doing what I want. Okay, so then I think it would make sense for the events to be a multi-select as well. And if that's the case, okay, so first of all, I've got to get this error fixed. That doesn't need to be on 2 lines. Okay, so yeah, there's only one step, so not really a reason for making it a pipeline. Unless, yeah, okay, it does need to be a pipeline. I just wonder how chaotic does it seem whenever I'm coding and live streaming. Okay, so I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to, I could map over it again, or I could just take, I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a new private function. Get compiled events. You might be thinking, well, that's a string. This will work. This will fail actually. That's right. So get compiled. We're gonna have two versions of this function. One that calls the other actually. This way, if I change things up later, I don't have to necessarily worry about forgetting to update this private function. Module. Will that work? Get compiled events. Okay, for each value, let's see what, I've made an assumption here that I'm getting a list of strings, and it could be wrong, so I'm going to bypass all that for now. Oh, yep. I had the wrong thing there. Okay, let's see what we've got. Okay, so that assumption was right about the value being a list of strings. So again, now that I've moved that out into a separate function, I don't actually need a pipeline there. Cool. Copy generate. So I'm not getting valid events here, but I'm getting something interesting. I think I'm going to IO inspect that just to kind of see the result. I think this needs to be a reduce, so I can reduce into a map like I've done before. And man, I always forget nowadays because you do enough JavaScript. Oh, hey, Arminio, how you doing? Thanks for the chat. Yeah, I was missing an end, so thanks for pointing that out. Thanks for jumping in. Where was I? So, oh yeah, enum reduce. What's the order of the arguments? Reduce. You know what, before I click on this, Herminio, if you're still there, I'll wait a few seconds. Whenever you have like that anonymous function in enum reduce, is the first argument the item or the accumulator? Do you know? I think I know, and I could take a guess. But I'm about to open the reduce doc just to see. Item then accumulator. I think you're right. Yes, element then accumulator. I thought so. I just didn't say it out loud. Okay, so this is going to be a reduce. This is going to be a map. And then we're going to ignore the accumulator on this one. No, we're going to actually pass that in here because this function will need that. Okay. So then this is where we do map dot put into the accumulator the module, and then the value will be module dot compiled events. All right, let's see what blows up now. Compiled events. Oh, this is going to be an array of 2. Okay, I'm getting the result I need. I'm just, the form doesn't actually know how to handle that correctly. So let's see here. So okay, so I think the problem is right now it's basically it's iterating through a checklist, which is no longer like the same shape of data that it was. It was just a list of strings. So here we're gonna change things up a little bit. This will be we'll call it allowed events, and then we're gonna add the label. We're going to add a multiple select. The options here are going to be events, I think. The first one is going to be, so this prompt option is pretty cool. You can just say, actually for a multi-select, I don't think this actually does anything because the options are all rendered. On a single select, you can basically make this kind of placeholder first option. Anyway, true, and then we'll make this the same size, 10. And then, of course, error tag. I'll go ahead and give this a call span full in case I ever do add more columns back to this form. Beautiful. Oh, I got to do class contents. So this on the field, like there's a div in the HTML, and I want to make sure that the label, the multi-select, the error tag are being rendered. Like I want the CSS to place those in the grid and not like deal with the wrapping div. So this basically ignores the div when it comes time to like place the children elements into the grid. It works. It works. So cool. Okay, so what's happening here? I'm just blown away. Surface is really cool. So I love this. So whenever I select a live view, it basically renders an option group here within the multi-select. And if we look into the HTML, this is what it looks like. So there's an opt group. And so the label here is this kind of, you can't select the label, but you can select any of the values within this group. And this is really cool because if let's say I'm creating a role that's going to allow multiple live views, you might not want to enable every single action for every live view. But man, that's nice. Okay, sweet. So I think that I'm gonna go ahead and commit this because things are moving along quite nicely. What did I do here? So that was just a cleanup, and then improve compiled events list. Thanks for following, Herminio. Hope you're staying warm. Brazil, Paraguay, forget Uruguay, forget which, wherever you're at. Down south, Brazil. Yeah. Okay. Sorry if I didn't mean to dox you there. Let's see. So application. So this is refactored to return a map. Okay, so this is the live view. This is the session. That's the session hook. Okay. I'll call it cleanup. Not super important. And then, so manage roles. Okay, so I don't need these anymore. Sweet. This is shaping up nicely. Render live views and allowed events as multiple select. Got to remove that IO inspect. And there was an extra label in here. Okay. Everything's being capitalized except for the event names. And then let me make sure I don't have any other IO inspects here. Good to go. Okay. Cool. Okay, so plenty more work to be done. What do I want to do next? let's just make sure that these are like whenever I make changes to the allowed events, I make sure those are, I want to make sure I understand how those are being captured. Okay, so actually this is, I think this is actually pattern matching even whenever I'm changing allowed events only. So let's see, call that data. By the way, nothing's being persisted to the socket currently. Okay, sure enough. So every time I change the form, it's going to trigger this function, which is a little bit sad because I do want to handle the change event only on each individual. Like I want to re-render the events whenever this changes, but that wasn't working. So let me just try it again. Okay, so let's take a look. So the select does have the Phoenix change update events. Oh man, was this a new feature that I need to update for? I don't remember if the inputs, like I think there was a recent change where that Phoenix change would only fire on so I think by default it would fire on form change events, and recently there was an addition to allow that to work on individual controls as well. Okay, so let's look at the change log. Okay, so 17.8 is where they added support for Phoenix change on individual inputs. I'm almost willing to bet I'm on an older version. So let's open up Mix. Phoenix LiveView, sure enough. Okay, here we go. Time to update. LiveView, we're gonna go to see if there's anything else we want to update for. Ooh, there's some cool stuff in here. This is gonna be useful. Yeah. So like Hermedio raises a point. So yeah, there's no like change event handler built into the elements currently that I would like. I think as of 17.8 on LiveView, that could be added. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting Phoenix change inside of the opt attribute here, so that like this just gets passed in back to the HTML element at the end of the day. some formatter changes. That could be really cool. Dynamic tag. That could be cool. Link function component. Okay, so they're adding some new components with Phoenix LiveView proper. Oh, ooh. Huh, okay, and that's so in version 18, which I'm not going to be upgrading to 18 because I think it's still in development, but version 18 is actually going to be deprecating push redirect, which I've been using so far. It's also replacing live redirect and live patch in favor of using that new link function. Okay, it makes sense. It just means that there's going to be a little bit of updating once we're on version 18. If I had to guess, I don't think that's out yet, so that's probably going to be released this summer, maybe in the fall, in time for ElixirConf. Put hex PM. Phoenix LiveView, I think. Yep, still 17.10. Okay. So let's update to version 17.10 here. And we'll find out if there's anything else that needs to be updated with that. Okay. Now we should see change events triggering that function, even when it's being called directly on the element and not on the form. Have you been doing some fun stuff with LiveView lately? While we're waiting for this thing to compile. Okay, it's running. You're lucky. LiveView and Surface is it's nice. It's a different mental framework. You have to kind of understand. Like you have to kind of shift how you think about solving problems. But once you're there, I think it's so nice. Okay, so I'm still not seeing. So I've got Phoenix change, update events. That's the same thing here, but it's not actually being triggered apparently. Support Phoenix change on individual inputs. There it is, Phoenix change. It's on individual input. What am I missing? Yeah, I think you're right. If you're coming to, that actually kind of lines up with my experience. So Herminio says that if you're coming from like a front end framework, it's easier to use Surface for sure. Should we click instead of change? Well, this is a form. What you're saying about the front end framework, I think is right. Like my earliest experience was mostly front end stuff and building stuff with Vue.js, and then kind of gradually getting further into the back end. but these days I think I'm working all the way up and down the stack. Maybe not quite into the native or like the C level, but I'm getting closer. So anyway, about this, yeah, this is a form. Like, so if it was a button, I would use click instead of change. But this is a select field, so it should be able to trigger events according to that changelog I saw. Now I'll just use a different input here, and then see if it's like a specific type of input that I'm using. Test, and then I think it was opts. Input is not a component. Oh, is it supposed to be text input or something? Okay, so this works on a text input. Doesn't work on a select input. That's interesting. So select and HTML do fire change whenever there's a value change, unless I've completely lost track of selects. Okay, yeah, so MDN says that so the select element fires change and input events. Change recommended for. Is that Phoenix change, like PHX dash change, or just change, do you think? Take a look here at the Surface docs. It says multiple select. There's no change property built in. Let's just try this. No, that's not doing it either. Oh, nope, that's got to be a string. It's working now. Did I have a typo? Yeah, no, it's working now. I think I had a typo. Let me just go back. PHX? That's the same thing. Okay, I give up. I have no idea why it didn't work until I retyped it, but here we are. Sweet. Cool. So now it's not going to trigger that function, that handler, every time I change other fields. It's only going to change whenever I update the LiveView field. That's what I needed. Thank you, LiveView team, for making that possible to fire change events on a single input. Okay, so that's doing what I need it to do. And then let's see. Okay. So now I can start to actually handle the form change events and start persisting these changes into like the socket memory. Don't need that anymore. Wonder if is this too long to be? Yep, that's too long. Okay, so now on the form, I'm gonna add that change handler back. This way I can validate things and also just get that state persisted. First things first, let's inspect the form data. Return the socket, unchanged. Okay. Now, why does the state need to be stored in the first place? Well, if the page reloads, you want the selections to be restored. You don't want to have to kind of reset the form every single time the page loads. So I think putting this stuff into the socket assigns is going to prevent that. So how have I been storing this so far? I've got LiveView modules and then events. And then within Surface, okay, so I'm using a chain set, and that's where the values actually come from. So what I need to do is update the chain set with the new values. And a user role will have, I think I'm going to go for about 30 more minutes, and then I'm going to be completely fried. Okay, so that's not what I need. I need a role, not a user role. Nothing's broken yet. Let's see, role. So a role has status, label, a list of live permissions, creator, updater, timestamps. So what I'm really updating here is going to be this live permissions list. Probably need to add a field for some of these other things, but we'll come back to that. Okay, so on change, we're going to say, we're going to move this out into an adders. Oh, you know what? I could just use form data here, I think. Okay, so the shape of this has actually changed a little bit. So it's no longer user role. Oh, maybe it's role now. There it is. Okay. Okay. Almost broke a sweat. What happened there? Okay, so comment that. Okay. So I can't just pass this. I can't just pass this form data, or I can't even just pass this directly into the role change set, because it's looking for a list of live permissions, and that's what I'm trying to actually store here in the change set. So I do need to kind of reshape the data before it gets sent into the change set. I wonder what this looks like if I select multiple live views. How do these show up in the? Let me clear this out. Clear. Okay, this is gonna be tricky because I've selected 2 live views. Those are showing up here, and then I've selected 3 events from each of the 3 events across those 2 live views, and those are just stored together in one list. So they're not grouped together. And I may have to do a little bit of like data massaging to get things kind of associated with the right place. Like, how am I going to associate each of these events with the correct module? Maybe the event like value needs to be the module name dot event or something, even though that's not how they're actually stored in the code. Ooh. I think that may work though. Okay, so we have our options, default selected option, and then we have like element options. I mean, yeah, so this is going to show me, it's going to be like allowed events, array brackets. Yeah, for role, allowed events. And the values are just like the actual. So there's like the value here is the same as the actual like kind of text of the option. So I'm thinking what I could do is just thinking it through in my head. So I could take the list of live views, like that big map of each module name and the like the compiled events, and then I could kind of filter through that or like reduce that into the modules that are selected and the events for each module that are selected. So kind of put that into a big reduce function. It just seems like inefficient to do that. So I'm thinking also like, is there a different like structure of the, like is a multi-select actually what I need here? Because if it's not multi-select, then what would it be? So if I don't do multi-select, another way to do this might just be to list just list all of the LiveView modules, not in a multi-select, but just as like labels or something, and then beneath each LiveView module name have checkboxes for allowed events. And then whenever the form changes, then basically kind of reduce down, kind of filter out any live views that don't have any selected events, or that have no. That wouldn't work because there are some cases where I want the live view to render even if you can't perform any of the events in the live view. I mean, I get the select thing working, so it's cool. It's just I don't think this structure, because like basically all these events are flattened into a single list. That's the kink in my plans here. It's under role allowed events. Honestly, feeling a little bit stumped. Like, how else would I do this? I don't think the multi-select is going to allow me, without some hackery, I don't think it's going to allow me to change like the actual value of each of these options. I can kind of almost see how that would be done though. So like it's rendering this group, like this option group, because it's a map with options. And I wonder inside of each of the, like inside of that list of events, sounds crazy. I could make the value. So I think each event could be converted from a string to another map. So it'd be a list of maps where each map would have like the label that you see would be the event name, and then the actual value would be the module brackets event name or something. So this is what the options look like. Are you able to see this? I'm not sure if this is too small in the element inspector here. But so they're grouped together inside of this opt group, but each value, yeah, so each value, is the same as the inner text. And like I can kind of see with like Phoenix hooks, if I really wanted to like kind of override the LiveView kind of logic here, I could add like a custom event listener where it would say, like whenever you select an option, it would append, like it would send back an object with the opt group label and then the option value inside of it or something. But I don't like that either. This feels really close to what I need to do though. Yeah. That's one like possible like result, like value result that I could kind of get to. Either that or like put token cleared inside of like a bracket so that it's easy to kind of pick apart with like a string split or something. The value could even be like module colon module name, then like event colon event name. This is all a little bit hacky though. Go ahead and fold that. Here's what I can do. Since I feel like I'm a little bit blocked just mentally at the moment from this, I have not. I know if I lay down, I'm not going to actually be able to take a nap, but that's what my body's telling me to do. What I can do instead of actually figuring out this problem, I can update the select styles because they're not showing up the same way as elements or as inputs and text areas. Like this blue border is not supposed to be there. Yeah, there's not supposed to be any outline. It seems like it's actually getting the inner shadow, which is weird. Huh, so why is it not seeing the border? It shouldn't matter if it's a multiple select either, but let's try this. Okay, apparently that does matter. Well, that was an easy fix. Ooh, man. I need to refresh my memory here. So, authorization tests. Let's see, I want to try to refresh my memory at how I'm storing these things. So these permissions are stored in a role. It's a list of live permissions. So this should be like basically whenever I submit the form, this is kind of the shape of the data that I need to be sending. The module name, a list of events for that module. So I think the answer may just be to reduce down the big list of modules, which may not be as complicated as it seems at first. So let's try it. Wow, I've not yawned this much in a while. So there's what is it? The role. There's like, I don't know if this ever happens to you whenever you're coding. I've kind of got like a premonition of like 5 minutes in the future. So like I'm like, okay, well here, let me do this thing, and then like I can just kind of see like how it's gonna play out, and I don't know if this is gonna really work. But I'm gonna keep charging forward anyway. So then the other one was what? LiveViews. Okay, so adders is going to be probably a result of a private function for filter LiveView events. So I'm going to go ahead and put this assign here, so I don't have to keep querying, even though it's in like application memory or like computer memory, because these module names are all compiled into that function. So lookup should be easy, but if it's already in the assign, then I don't even have to do the lookup or like pull that list. So filter LiveView events. So then here I'm going to need LiveView events from the assigns. Here we go. LiveView events, and then LiveViews, and then allowed events. Okay. Red squiggly, that function does not exist yet. So let's make it happen. I started to write an enum reduce, but I think for this, it might be kind of complicated, and I think a for comprehension is going to be easier to follow. This was I forget the shape of how this is going to look. Okay, and then if so LiveViews needs to be mapped into atoms. Okay, this will become a map at the end. Okay, then we're gonna have a result map. Okay, and then I need to filter events that only the events that appear in the allowed events list. There's a little bit of a gotcha here, but I'm going to go ahead and do this just so I can kind of see the results. So I need, I wonder if there's like a helper, like an enum function I can use here. Like what I really want is the intersection of the events and allowed events. Like events is going to be all the events in a live view. Allowed events should be a subset. And I may just have to filter. I think member will help me with that. Zip, what does zip do? No, zip. Okay, I understand how to map, so that's what I'll do. That should work if I actually throw events in there. All right, compilation error. Comprehensions must start with a generator. Did I not? I used double arrow. Okay, so now if I make changes, submit, oop, that blew up. There's events, which is supposed to be enumerable. Enum member. Oh, enum member. I'm not using that correctly. These are backwards. Okay. Let's just try one live view with one allowed event. Sweet, that's working. Now what if I do multiples? So this is the gotcha that I was thinking about a minute ago. So both of these live views have a submit event, and this is kind of naively just looking to see if the events list contains, like if each member is is within allowed events, then it will go ahead and put it in here. The problem is, yeah, it's adding submit. Like even if I submit, Let's see if I add submit just for add device, it's getting added to register device as well. So that's not what I want. Again, really close to solving the problem here. I think I'm just going to have to call it a day on this particular problem. What will happen is I will go to bed. I will, right before going to sleep, I will be like, just the wheels will be spinning probably. So I'll either go to sleep or wake up knowing the answer, or who knows, maybe I've got to scrap some of this and rethink the whole form layout. Maybe these multi-selects are not going to work. Change the value for options, yeah. Put the name of the module in the function. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking earlier. Because this gets close. This is why, like, whenever I started typing and I paused for a minute, I was like, this isn't going to work either. But here we are. At least I was able to get the data into the shape that I wanted. It's just not quite. I wonder if there's like an opt group. So opt group doesn't show up anywhere in the form data, I don't think. It'd be cool if it did, because then I could just use that. No, not so lucky. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to think about this one away from the computer so I can actually come up with a decent solution. But so far so good. I'm like actually making pretty good progress solving these things. I haven't really come across any hurdles in a while that I haven't been able to clear up within a day or two. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I think yeah, today's Monday, so I'm normally I live stream on Saturdays, 3 o'clock Eastern time. Don't know what that is in GMT. Let's see, current time. It is GMT, right? Greenwich Mean Time. So Detroit is -4. So yeah, 3 p.m. Saturdays, Michigan time is whenever I'm usually live streaming the work I'm doing here. Yeah, so I'll be back at this next week. Don't be surprised if I already kind of moved past this. That seems to be the pattern is I'll be stuck on a problem. I'll kind of anticipate working on it again in the next stream. And then by the time that next video comes around, I've already solved the problem and moved on to the next one. So anyway, before I wrap up here, did you want to take a look at anything, or I'm not sure when you jumped in or if you missed anything interesting. I can kind of poke and prod a little bit here. Unless you're just ready for an app like I am. Yeah, I did start. So initially I had checkboxes and yeah, that was like an hour ago. Yeah, when the list is going to be bigger. Yeah. Another thing I can do as far as like the size of these lists, I think even with the multi-select you can add like a resize, like a resize Y. Let's try that. I am using Tailwind, by the way. So yeah, I can make these lists resizable. I think maybe they're not resizable by default because of this weird kind of laggy behavior. I don't know if that's because I'm using transition. I bet it is. Oh, maybe not. Okay, yeah, I had transition all because I think it was probably don't need transition all. Yeah, it's transitioning just fine without transitioning all. Transition all is going to like mean that even the height gets that kind of smooth out animation, and we don't necessarily need that here. Yeah, so that works here. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of why I wanted to use the multi-select, because this, like, at least on the client side, is very, very easy. I don't think like an admin would probably understand how to multi-select. I do know that like I've released apps before where people didn't understand how to control or shift click multiple things, but depends on your user base, I think. But yeah, that's why I like what I'm seeing here, and I like what I'm able to do. I just don't know how I'm going to get the data formatted correctly into that handle event function so that I can kind of reliably get the data into the right place. So we'll see. I'm going to shrink these just a little bit. Okay. That's a lot better. Okay. Cool. So let me commit these changes. All right. I'm zapped. I think my brain is exhausted. It's ready for that Memorial Day rest, maybe a nap. It's too late for a nap, really, but I think it's time to watch a show or movie or something and call it a day. Anyway, thanks again, Hermino, for stopping by. Thanks to anyone else who might have stopped by and didn't say anything earlier. And yeah, if you ever want to follow me on Twitter, this is my profile at Owen Bickford. Like I say every week, I've got some really nasty code at Type 1 Full on GitHub. Most of the stuff I'm proud of, it actually lives within, like the day job repos. And this project is closed source, at least for now. And but yeah, I'm kind of open sourcing just the knowledge by doing these live streams. So anyway, I'm going to call it a day, and I hope to, I will be back on Saturday evening, so we'll catch you then.